Hi, this is Veronica checking on audio.
Hey, Veronica, you look and you sound good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything is A-OK.
Thank you, Member Covey.
So if you don't have the email, let me know and I'll forward it to you again. Sorry. Oh.
Hi, Alex.
Good evening. Hi, Sophia. Nice to see you.
Evening, nice to see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful.
And Lou, you're with us this evening as well to be our facilitator.
Yes, I am, but I have no idea what that means.
Okay, well, I sent you a script with an email. I don't know if you saw it in your BCC agenda in your email. I gave you a whole lineup. I emailed you last night.
Hang on a second. I've been moving my office around today.
No worries. If not, I'm happy to jump in for you.
How hard could it be?
It's not that hard.
It's government work, right?
I don't know about that piece. But we try to make it as easy as possible.
There it is.
Yeah, if you hit on the Word document, then you can kick off the meeting.
Okay. It's taken a while to open.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
but more people are joining us, I see, so. give
Yeah,
them
it's
a
all
chance to-
good. Hey, it's a nice way of being able to allow other people to jump on as well. Good evening, everyone. If you're here for the City Council Redistricting Workshop for District 3. So I hope, well, you can see it on the screen. So we're all in the right place.
So just to see who's here, by the way, I'm Lou Covey. I'm a representative for District 3. And I like to know which of you are actually in District 3. I see Sophia at the top of the list. Are you one of them?
So,
Oh,
Sophia,
no.
Sophia's our presenter with Redistricting Partners, our consultant. But let's do this, Lou. Do you want me to just jump in? Because I have the script right in front of me. That's fine, because we got to go through.
It just popped up.
Okay.
So good evening and thank you for tuning in to our District 3 Redistricting Workshop hosted by the Advisory Redistricting Committee and the Redwood City staff. Attending the meeting tonight via teleconference. Why is this happening? Our committee members Gardner, Gasparini, Pena, and myself, committee member Lou Covey, city staff and staff from the city, redistricting consultant, redistricting partners, and are also participating via teleconference. This meeting is being streamed live on the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted following this workshop, hopefully without all my delays out of it. We are offering Spanish translation for all ARC meetings and workshops through a dial-in conference line. If you wish to hear the meeting in Spanish, please dial 669-900-6833 and then enter meeting ID 346-830-8566 and the password 1017. Again, that phone number is 669-900-6833, meeting ID 346-830-8566, and password 1017. And I will now turn it over to our translator to give the instructions in Spanish.
Muy buenas noches. Estas son las instrucciones para escuchar la reunión en español. Por favor, llame al 669-900-6833 con el número de reunión 346-830-8566. La contraseña es 1017. Nuevamente llame al 669-900-6833, número de reunión 346-830-8566, contraseña 1017. Gracias.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager Alex Kojikian for a brief overview of today's workshop and the city's redistricting process.
Great. Thank you, Lou, for that introduction, and just welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy evenings to be here with us today to talk about the city's redistricting initiative. Our workshop tonight will begin with a presentation from the city's redistricting consultant, followed by a demonstration of our online mapping tool, which is called Districtor. Following the presentation, we'll open it up for feedback and questions and public comment from participants. We want this to be engaging, and so Sophia here with us with Redistricting Partners will be able to do a presentation, and we'll talk a lot about communities of interest and look for feedback from all of you. Just so that you're aware, the city transitioned from at-large election system where everyone votes for all the city council members to a by-district election system where you have districts, and this is for District 3 this evening in the Friendly Acres, Redwood Village, and Stomba Heller neighborhoods, where you only get to vote for one council member. And so that happened in 2019 with the first election in 2020. And so what happens is with district elections, every 10 years when the new census data comes out, we have to look to redraw the districts so that they are balanced equally for the most part. And Sophia will go maybe into a little bit more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll ask Sophia and maybe Jessica, if you can put up the PowerPoint, please, presentation for us this evening so that we can jump right in and have Sophia present. And then with us tonight too is Veronica Ramirez, our city attorney, and Redistricting Partner staff, and myself, and there's ARC committee members here as well, as Lou mentioned. And so we'll all be here to answer questions as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sophia to present to us this evening. Sophia?
Do you all see the presentation on my screen?
I do.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Member Covey, and thank you, members of the public for taking time to be with us today. My name is Sophia Garcia. I'm the GIS and Outreach Director with Redistricting Partners. So throughout this redistricting process with the City of Redwood City, you will see myself or another member of the Redistricting Partners team. So we're going to jump right in. So we're excited to have you with us this evening. This is one of the many outreach hearings that we're having with the City of Redwood City, and we have a number of links for you, and we'll reference the Redwood City website link where you can find out all the information on the process. Here is the just a map showing what the current district lines look like for the city. And these will change throughout this process as we get to the end. The agenda for this evening, we're going to talk about the redistricting basics. We'll do an overview of the advisory redistricting committee. You'll also potentially hear it being referred to as an ARC throughout the process. We'll go through the timeline. We'll look at the traditional redistricting principles that the ARC and the city will have to follow. We'll spend a lot of time on communities of interest. We'll do the map tool demonstration after the presentation. We'll go in depth with you all on that, and hopefully we'll see a lot of submissions after tonight. We'll talk about some feedback on communities of interest, and then at the end we have the public hearing schedule for the rest of the outreach hearings. So quite a bit to get covered tonight. So thanks for joining us. So what is redistricting? We have to start off by just having a base understanding of what this is. And redistricting is the process of adjusting district lines every 10 years, as Alex said earlier, after the release of the US Census. So we are in a much more compressed timeline because normally we get the census data at the end of March. This year we got it at the end of August, and we're still waiting on that final census data from the state with the prisoner reapportionment. But some well-known examples for redistricting are at the federal and state level. So our congressional and state legislators, and here in California, that redistricting is being done by our independent redistricting commission, but local governments must also go through this process. So the City of Redwood City is going through this process right now, and the process to ensure that the city council boundaries are rebalanced after the census. Some things to note, beyond creating districts of equal population, Redistricting also serves to empower local communities and preserve voting rights. So this process, there is a more focus on the outreach piece. There is a new law called the Fair Maps Act, which encourages cities and counties to really have a more robust outreach system, which is why we're here tonight, this evening, doing this process. The Advisory Redistricting Committee, we have some folks on here tonight. Always happy to see you all. And the committee was appointed by the City Council, and there are folks from District 1 through 7, and there are also some ARC committee members that are at large. So you have quite a robust committee who's here with us and also throughout the process. Some of the structure of the ARC specifically is that the City Council appointed the commissioners to assist in conducting community outreach and recommending a new City Council district map. Some of the goals of the ARC are to conduct community outreach hearings, identify communities of interest from input. So hopefully we'll have some input at the this evening, to draft new City Council maps from communities of interest input, and to recommend a map or maps to the City Council. So they're here to listen this evening and to listen throughout this outreach process, and then to gather all of that testimony from written testimony, email testimony, from paper maps, online maps, maps that come in napkins, any of that testimony, listen to it, and then create some draft maps for the city to review. For the timeline, again, it's a compressed timeline. The final date that we're all looking at is January 24th, 2022. So we do have some time into next year. But right now we're in phase 2, and the phase 2 is focused on those community workshops by district. And this is the phase where the committee and staff and us as consultants are listening. We're not creating any draft maps. We're not looking at doing that. We're looking at listening, gathering that community of interest testimony. So then at the end of October for phase 3, we can start drafting maps and talking with the ARC and looking at their recommendations. So again, we're in that community workshops by district, and this evening we're in District 3. So we're just at the beginning of our community workshops in that phase 2. The traditional redistricting principles, these are the principles that guide the process. Then they're here to help the city to draw lines for fair representation. These are ranked criteria. So the ARC and the city will have to look at these based in sort of this order by state law and federal law as well. I'm going to just do some high touch points on most of these principles. And if members of the public are interested in having a presentation that goes more in depth, the ARC did receive a Redistricting 101 presentation, which should be on the website and in past meeting minutes and agendas. But that first criteria that we're looking at is relatively equal size. So creating districts of relatively equal size based on the census population, and that's based on people, not citizens. So when we're looking to draft maps and also finalize map plans, we're looking at that relatively equal size piece. Contiguous is one of those words that kind of come around once a decade, and it means that districts shouldn't hop or jump over one another. So if you kind of think of the board game checkers or Twister, we don't want to see districts that hop over one another, or you on the board game kind of splayed out throughout the city. Maintaining communities of interest is a high criteria that the ARC and city will have to sort of look at and evaluate throughout the process, and we'll go really in depth with that after this slide. Following city, county, local government lines. So if there's an interest to add more layers to the map, look at other existing data, the ARC can look at that, and then keep districts compact in appearance or in function. So this, I just want to note too, just because there might be a district that looks really funny, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a gerrymander. That may mean that, again, that this is a ranked criteria. So a district may look a little weird to help maintain a communities of interest, or look at that first criteria of relatively equal size. In California, there's the definition for compactness to not bypass nearby population for faraway population. So not looking to kind of keep the population and make a district that is nearby. But again, there's more information on the rest of these criteria and that Redistricting 101 presentation, because today we want to focus on that communities of interest piece and really helping members who are here with us tonight or maybe watching later to understand a way to give testimony to the ARC so that they can consider it in this redistricting process. We know that members of the public and residents of the city of Redwood City are experts of your community. You interact with your city in different ways to recreate. You may live there, you may work there. All of those three things, you may operate with the city in all three of those ways. So we want to let you all know that we want to listen to that, but also that this is a redistricting process. And so there are some constraints that the ARC and the city will have to consider in terms of, again, those draft maps and final maps. So communities of interest at its core is about bringing like-minded people together for representation. So really centering and uplifting community input in the redistricting process. They're the building blocks of districts, and communities of interest can include culture, language minorities, and other groups. And we have our next slide that gives a really large list of things that members of the public can come forward with. We do want folks to remember that because communities of interest, they're personal, they're how we interact with the city, they're subjective, and we want folks to remain open-ended and inclusive and inclusive as possible when we're listening to testimony, when we're listening to our neighbors, and we're listening to how they interact with the city. Some communities covered by the Voting Rights Act are race and ethnicity, such as Latinos, Asian Americans. Those are the three kind of majority groups that are looked at for Voting Rights Act districts. But the really big thing to consider here is that race cannot be the predominant factor in drawing districts unless there is a Voting Rights Act consideration, which will come from legal counsel. So again, that was based on legal counsel input directing us and the ARC to draw districts based on that. Right now, we are operating with letting folks know that we know that communities of interest, race is a communities of interest and can be considered that, but we want folks and members of the public to think beyond race during this factor and kind of think of other things that tie your community together besides race. Some examples of that could include historical communities, outdoor recreation areas, school districts, whether you're a homeowner or a renter, neighborhoods. So these are kind of some examples of communities of interest. And so other things to consider is that there are things that the ARC and city are prohibited from being considered as a community of interest. So there's the kind of talk through the definition of it, gave you some examples. And now in this process for California, we have to think that there are some communities of interest that are explicitly prohibited from being considered, and that's under a new California law called the Fair Maps Act, otherwise known as AB 849, if anybody would like to research that on their own. And the three things are political party affiliation, incumbency, and political candidates. So we do know that members of the public can come forward and give testimony and talk about things that they would like, but in terms of the ARC and the city and the constraints that they're operating under for this redistricting cycle, political party affiliation, incumbency, and political candidates are disallowed from being considered as a community of interest. So that's an important thing to kind of remember and think about. Another thing that's difficult from being considered as a community of interest is groups that may have similarly minded people but don't share a similar geographic location. So in this instance, a community of interest that's citywide. Because we are ultimately talking about creating draft maps and then a final map that does have the city in 7 different districts, it's difficult to map a community of interest and consider it for the redistricting process when we're talking about drawing districts that are 7 districts ultimately. So we encourage folks that may have a community of interest that's citywide to ask and think if there's any area of the city that may be a hotspot, or if there's a concentration of your community of interest somewhere. We want you to sort of think about that when you're giving your testimony. So we've talked about some stuff abstractly, what communities of interest are. We've given you some examples of them. We've talked about what are prohibited and maybe some other questions to think through. And so as you're giving your testimony and as you're creating your maps, some things that are helpful in order to give your testimony is to think of these three things. So to ask yourself, does the community have a shared characteristic or bond? Is it a shared culture? What are the things that kind of bind your community, your neighborhood, your workplace together? What are those things, again, beyond race, that bring your community together? The second one is the community geographic in nature? So can it be mapped? Again, we are ultimately talking about passing a map with 7 districts. And so that geographic component is pretty important. If you are submitting a map on paper or online, of course, we're going to get that geography from you. But if you're given written or verbal testimony, it is really helpful if you give us a specific location or boundaries of your community, such as street names or highways. So that helps us kind of capture the community of interest you're talking about when we are drafting those plans. And the third one is, how would you describe your community's relationship with a jurisdiction and how it is affected by policy decisions? So in other words, how does your community relate to the policy decisions that the City of Redwood City do? What are the things that impact your community in a negative way or a positive way, and that you would benefit from having your community kept together in a district? So those are sort of the three things. Again, we understand that everyone there are experts in their community and really want to hear your testimony and consider it, but there are constraints that the ARC will have to keep in mind. So we've gone through communities of interest abstractly. We've given you some examples. We've talked through what can't be considered under the new law as a community of interest. And so we have some examples here that we generally like to be interactive, but if folks, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself or nod. Again, we have some repeats from the staff and the city, so they've gone through these quite a bit. But if there's anyone new, I encourage you to kind of think through these with us. So the first kind of question or example, now that we're all talked about communities of interest, is a group of residents who live downtown testify to the city's redistricting committee. Would this be considered as a community of interest? So could the ARC think about renters as a community of interest for this redistricting cycle? What do people think?
Well, I think it should be, because they share a common interest. The price of rent, the cost of living in here. They're generally lower income than people who actually own homes. So I would say, yeah, that should be a community of interest.
Love it. And if you are agreeing with Member Covey, then you're correct. So this is a group of residents who can easily be mapped. They can be mapped in a distinct area. They share common policy interests that can be addressed through public legislation. So exactly what Member Covey said is definitely, this could be something that the ARC considers. So I have a second one for you. And again, these are pretty different. A group of neighborhoods on the east side of the city who are susceptible to flooding. That's a fun word. Would this collection of neighborhoods be considered as a community of interest? So a neighborhood that has potentially negative environmental impacts because of flooding. Do we think that this could be considered as a community of interest? What do people think? See Member Covey thinking.
I want to let somebody else step in, but considering I live in a neighborhood that is susceptible to flooding, it means something to me.
Okay. Anything else? So again, if you're thinking to yourself, kind of mulling it over, and you've said yes, then you're correct. This is a group of residents who can easily be mapped. they're in a distinct area, they share common policy interests, which can be addressed through legislation. And yeah, you're right, it doesn't matter if it's in multiple neighborhoods. So your community, again, could be a large portion of the city in a specific area. It could be one street, it could be one store, it can be a lot, multiple neighborhoods if that's something that you all are affected by. We could think about, because we're in California, there's a number of homes in where I live that are susceptible to fire, or when our river floods, it could be susceptible to flooding. So this could be insert environmental hazard or disaster, and that could be, those all could be considered as communities of interest. So hopefully it doesn't flood too much in that area this year. We do need rain, maybe not specifically in that area of the city, but love to see it in our Sierras. So we have another one. Again, these are pretty different as we're thinking through what the community could come forward with. Our other example is a group of business owners with a focus on ensuring there is ample parking, clean streets, and consistent police patrols around throughout a central business district. This could be considered as a community of interest. So we have a group of business owners who are really focused with keeping their area happy so that shoppers kind of come and feel safe and want to visit this business district frequently. What do people think? So I see a nod from Member Covey. And if people who are, see some thumbs up, and if you're kind of talking to you and yourself, and kind of thinking through, yes, this can be considered as a community of interest. They share a geographic location and specific needs in a similar area. And this may not be a community of interest that someone from a member of the public may agree with. So there could be, I think on our last meeting, someone came forward and didn't want business owners to be a high community of interest or a priority. Those are decisions that the ARC will have to talk about and uplift and discuss. So we may see competing communities of interest or neighborhood overlaps throughout this process. And we want to see that. We know that this process, there's a lot of different ways with the nature of communities of interest. We all kind of define them differently, but those kind of conversations will happen in that phase 3 as the ARC is sifted through all the community of interest testimony and is creating draft maps. But this definitely business owners can be considered as a community of interest. So we're going in a different direction with this example. This one is a statewide group for people who are fans of the Giants testify to the local city redistricting commission. Do folks on the call think that a statewide group of fans of the San Francisco Giants should be considered as a community of interest? What do folks think?
Probably not.
Probably not. Some kind of people who are like questioning, giving me a questionable face. If you're said no, then you're correct. So it is important that a community of interest is in a distinct area, distinct enough to draw on a map. This group overlaps throughout the entire state, and it's unlikely that there is a statewide governing body on San Francisco Giant fans. So if we kind of think about this in another way, so if there were folks who were part of an adult baseball recreation league in the city of Redwood City, and they came forward and wanted to talk about a specific park, maybe they want the lights to be on longer, or if there is a group of parks that they'd like more space for that, then that could be considered as a community of interest because it's within the city limits. We're kind of talking about a specific community. They're talking about parks in the area. So that could be considered something as a community of interest kind of focused around recreation. But a statewide group, that doesn't make sense for the city of Redwood City. So these questions are helping you sort of think through what your testimony would look like, some of the things that you would come forward with. Again, we went through recreation, we went through kind of effects of where you live, kind of maybe where you go shopping. And so if you're thinking, I really want to give testimony, we'll have a space to do that at the end of the presentation. You can also submit your community of interest online via this form, and we'll go through the website with you after the presentation so that you're able to know where all of these links are. We'll talk about the districtor map submission, and right now the online mapping platform will be used for community of interest testimony, and that'll be used for testimony, and the committee would love to get as much as they can, and it'll be open until the end of October. And then that similar mapping platform will then be used to create draft maps or full map plans. So again, we'll go through that, but right now they're really interested and focused on getting that community of interest testimony. The online tool that we're using with the City of Redwood City is called Districtor, and it is linked at the bottom right here. So it's districtor.org/tag/Redwood City. And again, we will go through that with you at the end of the presentation. There's also a paper map that will be available for folks, and it has information. It's kind of a large map, and you can circle your communities of interest, give more information. And I believe, Alex, those are available in libraries and the City Hall, correct? Folks can pick them up at those two areas. Right?
That's
okay,
correct.
yes. Got it. Yes. So if you love to get a paper map, the libraries have that, and they're also working with the libraries to have them trained on using Districtor as well. So we want to give ample opportunity and options for you all to submit your testimony. And again, as you're kind of giving your feedback, we find these three questions seem to be pretty helpful. Again, in terms of it's a redistricting process and it is your testimony. So if you're thinking through, does the community have a shared culture, characteristic, or bond? Is the community geographic in nature? Can it be mapped? And then how does my community relate to the workings of the City of Redwood City? So those are sort of the three questions we'd love for you all to think about when giving your testimony in any of these forms. Again, yes, go ahead.
And Sophia, Maria has done a great job outlining in the chat box too. So if you'd like to, rather than speak and you want to put it in the chat box, we'll take that testimony as well. And we'll copy and paste that in there from staff so that we have that information. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, that was on my other screen. Thank you for flagging that. So as Alex said, check the chat if you'd like to give your comments that way. Again, you can speak at any of these workshops that are happening today, and you can see we have quite a few, and we're going until October 9th, where the city will hold a citywide workshop in Spanish. And while all of these workshops are, we're kind of focusing on one district, and they're virtual. Anyone who is a resident of any of the districts is welcome to attend, encouraged to attend. But the city, we wanted to try to focus outreach district by district. And again, we have a member Covey here who's for that district, and hopefully some other members specifically from District 3 with us tonight. So if you're asking yourself, if you want to give yourself homework, if you want to bring more people into this process, we'd love for you to take that community of interest survey, to attend a workshop, and to give that placemat, to share all of these links with your friends, with your family, with any of your neighbors. We encourage you to participate throughout this outreach process. And then also when we get in that draft map phase, we'd love to hear comments on the maps that we produce and that the ARC will finalize, the draft maps that they want to be discussed. At the bottom here, we have the website link to the City of Redwood City, where all of this information is there. And under the Fair Maps Act, the city will hold all of this information on that redistricting website for 10 years. So you can kind of wave to the people of 2030 if anybody 10 years ago is going to watch this. So you can look at this redistricting information for 10 years on that website. So that is the presentation that we have, and I'm going to stop sharing, and then I will bring up those links to the web page. Next out here. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Working with 2 screens here. Okay. Okay, are you able to see my my screen?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to read.
Hard to read. Okay, let me make it
There we
bigger.
go. Okay.
Is that helpful? It does look a little small, huh? Let's try to make. Okay, I think I made the words bigger. Okay, but let me go back to the Redwood City page. And again, let me make this bigger. Are you able to see this, Member Covey, the Redwood City redistricting page?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this is the website that was linked at the end of the presentation. And here the staff is continuing to update this and has done such a great job. So all of those links that are in the presentation are here on this website. We have the where you can submit your community of interest survey in different languages. So here we'll see it pop up and we can start filling it out. And it has a couple of those questions here. So those 3 questions that we've referenced, and you can submit it as an e-survey. Add your name and go through the district that you're in, space for more information. So you can just tell us as much information as you'd like. So we're going to go back to that web page. You have more information on the background of the redistricting process, information on the redistricting committee. We have a list of the members, the timeline here. Again, want to remind folks on the call, we're in that phase 2. We have agenda, minutes, and recordings. And then to submit a draft map, we have the districtor tool. Oh, Alex, can you remind me, where is the placemat? So folks want to look at the, oh, it's here, right? Paper map.
That is correct.
Awesome, great. So it's in that mapping tab. So here is this paper map that you can get a copy of from the libraries and from City Hall. And they're pretty cool. If you'd like to keep it.
Or you can print this out, right, Sophia?
This is true. Yeah, you can print it out on your printer or your friend's printer, whoever has a printer at their home or their workplace. And you can send a scan to this to the staff email, or you can send us a picture. And if you'd also like to sign up for like text updates, you can text redistrict to 474747 to subscribe to get those texts. So here's that map. And if we go back to submit a draft map, we're going to click on the districtor mapping tool, and it's going to take us directly to the Redwood City districtor webpage. And here's some more information. And it also gives you a link to the Redwood City redistricting webpage, which we were just on. You have this button to start drawing your community. And here again, when we're in that phase to draw draft maps, there will be an additional button to draw draft maps. So right now we're in the community mapping phase. We have a public gallery where any submissions that the members of the public submit will appear here. So we have one, and hopefully we'll get more today. A work in progress, if there's any drafts, that'll be in that section. And then an about, if you'd like to learn more about redistricting partners. So we're going to go up and we're going to click on the draw our communities based out of blocks. And so this is the map and how it will look like. When you open up Districtor, you'll see the outline of the city of Redwood City. And if folks on the call haven't been on Districtor before, you might be asking yourself, why is this city broken up into these gray lines? So on that orangey red button that we clicked on, it said you're making a district or community of interest based out of census blocks. And we're thinking about the criteria that the ARC will have to consider and the council will have to consider. It's creating districts of relatively equal size based on census data. And census blocks are the smallest unit of census geography that the Bureau releases. So that's why this is built out of census blocks, and that's why it's kind of broken up in this way. So on the left-hand side, you have a search bar. So if you want to type in a specific location, so your workplace or a park, or whatever you'd like to zoom to, if you search in there, it'll zoom that area to the map. You have a zoom in, a zoom out button, and then also a button that will orient your map pointing north. So that's kind of what's happening on the left side of the screen. On the right side, there's 4 buttons up at the top and 3 tabs. So when we start off, our mouse has us directly on this pan tool, which we can grab the map, move around. We can also zoom in and zoom out with our mouse. So we're going to zoom in just to an area with our mouse. Okay. We have the Paintbrush Tool, which allows us to draw communities of interest. We can also grab a lot of census blocks, or we can just go one by one. And I'm going to just go through all the buttons first, and then we'll start drawing an example. You have the Erase tool, which erases any of the census blocks that you don't want to be in your community of interest. And then you have an Inspection tool, which if you hover over a census block, it'll give you information on the total population, and then also the Hispanic, Asian, and Black breakdown of that specific census block. So we're going to go back and just give an example of how we draw a community of interest. And so let's think smaller. Okay, so to draw a community of interest, you just hover over it and you start clicking away. And so we're just going to click as much as we'd like. And you notice that you aren't able to click outside of the district boundary because we're here to redistrict the city of Redwood City, not your neighbors. So we're going to grab this area. And on the community of interest tool, you're able to create as many communities of interest as you would like. You can just keep adding colors. And a difference with the community of interest tool is you're able to overlap your areas. So here you can see that we can overlap with the blue and the yellow, but it doesn't create its own community of interest. It's just those 3 colors that we've created. So at any time throughout this process, you're able to name your specific geographies. So you just click on it on the selection tab, you click on it, and here we can name it. I'm just going to name it something generic. And this description tab, you can sort of think through those 3 questions and add as much information as you'd like here. Sort of thinking about the geography of it, what ties it together, if there's just how your thing relates. If you want to create a specific community of interest, that's like a location, because we know that they're not just geographies, they could be specific points. You go down to the important places, and now you can click on location. And again, similar to the geography, you can add as many important places as you'd like by just simply clicking on that button again. The difference with this is that as many dots as you create, they're always going to be red. So you're not going to be able to make like a purple dot or an orange dot. They're always going to be red. But if you hover over them, then it gives you the name of them. So we're going to hover over 0.3 on 0.3. And again, I'm going to name it something generic. Always go for dog parks. And if you want to delete something, so I'm going to delete this point, it's new point 1, select new point 1, and then I click on the delete button and it's gone. So that's the difference with the specific points. And again, you have the description box. We also have a box for data layers, so we can see we have school districts. We have neighborhood associations, which is the file that we use to create those placemats. So it's really cool that we have that. We work with the city to get that. And then if you want to just see where the current district boundaries are, we have that tab as well. You're also able to see different demographics. So based on total population, Hispanic, Black, and Asian, and then also with citizen voting age population. And this is the layer that is used to create voting rights districts, which is a citizen voting age population. You're also able to create a coalition district by clicking on whatever buttons you'd like, going back to show population, and then if you click on the coalition population, it'll pop up there. And the final tab is the evaluation tab, where you'll see your community of interest compared to the city. This evaluation tab we see more often used when the tool is being used to create districts, because we know that you don't need census data to create a community of interest, but this is something you can look at. When you're happy with your map, you click on the Save button, and up will pop a new window where you can share to gallery. And here, if you save this map, share to gallery, then it will appear in that section on that main homepage where we saw one submission. Or if you want to save it as a draft, then you click on Work in Progress and it will save it as a draft and you can come back. For this one though, it remembers your computer. So if you were to go on your laptop and you went to another laptop, you'd have to create a new map. So the work in progress it remembers you based on your computer. Because again, for Districtor, you don't need a login. So that's something to remember, but you are welcome to submit as many maps as you'd like. So if you can't get back into it, that's okay. You can also save your map and share it based on this unique URL that it creates. And so if we were to copy this, add it to a new window, the map would pop up there. You can also save or send your map as a PDF. So if you're going to print out those maps via the website, you can also print out this map too, scan it in, send us a photo, make it as a flyer. And there's also the opportunity, if you want to look at this map in another mapping software, you can download it and look at it on like an Esri software or Maptitude by downloading the shapefile or the CSV. So that's throwing a lot at you guys tonight, but that's the end of the presentation and the mapping software. So
Okay.
throw it back to you guys.
All right, Sophia, thank you for that presentation. And we're going to be opening up to questions right now. We want to start by asking the ARC members or staff if there are questions and comments. I do have one question that I want to start off with, but I also want to say when it comes to making comments and stuff, if you're not used to using Zoom, look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see all these buttons. One of them is reactions. You click on that, and that's where you'll find the button to raise your hand. You do that, then you'll get the floor. And Sophia is actually watching all of this, so she'll keep you in line and get you in line. Also, if you haven't figured out the chat button, that chat button is down there too. And there's lots of stuff going on there right now, particularly from Maria Diaz Vivian. And quite frankly, I would like to buy you coffee and talk to you. Because that's you're hitting on all the subjects that I'm concerned about, because what you're talking about in Stanbaugh Heller is the same here in Friendly Acres. So I could use your input. So with that, anybody else have? Oh, let me ask my question before I jump in here. One of the things I saw on the redistrictor was a button for voting age demographics. One of the things I'm concerned about, especially here in Friendly Acres, is low voter turnout, because people just don't believe their votes mean anything. We've got some of the lowest voter turnout in Redwood City consistently. And I was wondering if we can use those turnouts to consider the redrawing of the districts. All right, that takes care of that.
No, we don't use voter data in redistricting. citizen voting age population are folks who are over the age of 18. So it's not people who are registered to vote or who don't vote. That's not what we're looking at as a data set. So if folks come forward with that and talk about, yeah, again, partisanship or voting, that's not allowable for the ARC to consider. Again, of course, the members of the public can come forward with that, but it's not within the criteria they're allowed to use when I'm drafting maps. That is a very common question we get though,
Right.
again, because redistricting is kind of related to like elections. So, but great question.
All right.
Sophia, there's a question in the inbox here. It says, when submitting a community of interest, do we need to identify the geographic boundaries of that community of interest we were talking about? What if the community of interest might be a value that many neighborhoods share? For example, does the community of interest need to be contiguous or connecting?
Great question. If you are submitting your community of interest verbally or written, we encourage you to give those boundaries because myself or an ARC member, really wants to consider your community of interest. But if you don't give us a geography, it's difficult to consider it as on a map. It's, we won't be able to add it to a draft map. So if you give us that geography, that really helps us capture what you believe as your community of interest. And communities of interest, they don't have to be contiguous. They don't have to be compact. It's how you interact with the community. And the ARC they do have some constraints, again, thinking of that ranked criteria. Communities of interest and maintaining them together is a high criteria, but again, they have to make sure they follow state and federal laws. But if we remember, compactness is on the bottom. And so there might be some districts with some maps that are submitted, some maps that the ARC consider, or even a final map that may have a district that looks really funny. And that may be because they really want to keep a specific community together. So yes to giving us geography. No, they don't have to be contiguous. Great
Okay.
questions, everyone.
Anyone else from the ARC committee or the staff? Okay, I'm seeing heads not say no. So let's open it up to everyone else. And Sophia, you're going to monitor this, right?
I'm here to answer questions, and yeah, I think we're monitoring together with Alex and you, Member Covey. And if anything happens, Veronica's here to step in and help us with that.
And if anyone's calling out on their phone, you press *9 to request to speak.
Yeah, so if you have any comments about communities of interest that you want to share right now, feel free. If not, we've showed you all the different tools and ways that you can communicate with us, whether it be the survey, the narrative form of writing it out, whether it's a map form of drawing it out and explaining what it is, and then using the Districtor software where you can go ahead and do that as well. And, as we've previously mentioned, we'll get into the phase of actually drawing districts. It'll be after the census data is final, which we're thinking, Sophia, is it still like September 19th, that deadline?
For what, sorry?
For the census data being finalized and we kind of pivoting into the district, kind of starting to draw districts.
Yeah, we hope to get the data the finalized data by the end of the month. We're waiting on the state, the UC Berkeley statewide database to reapportion the prisoner population. That's a new thing too with this redistricting cycle, is that Redwood City will have to use that data set from the statewide database, which moves the prison population from state prisons from the prison to where they used to live. But we won't start drafting maps with this committee until this outreach process is finished. So we might get that census data earlier, but we won't start drawing or drafting any maps until this outreach piece is finished.
Perfect. Maria, I see your hand up. Maria, it's great to see you, by the way. Right?
Yeah.
I don't see you, but it's great to see your name.
And that's a great picture. I love that.
Yes, that's actually my piece.
Oh,
And I don't. Some people know I'm an artist. Some people don't.
I did
And,
not know, Maria. Thank you for that tidbit after all these years.
Yeah, now you know more about me.
Got it.
So the idea, it's interesting because it fits into the communities of interest. We were taken to the art museum at Stanford for my final, for the final of the art class. And we're supposed to go through every area of the museum and then pick out what we had, in our background, and then put it into like an art piece collage. And that's why you see on mine, the bottom one has a metate, where you do the cornmeal and you make the tortillas.
Okay.
And then you see some European art pieces at the top. And then my brother married a gal from China. So I integrated some of what babies wear when they're little. And so basically I put it in, and then not many people know that. We have a small percent, about 8% back generations of African American, and that's where the other pieces come in. And so that's like the collage.
You're a community of interest all by yourself.
Right. So not many people. And the central piece is I'm about 60 plus, 64-ish of indigenous. And so that's why that was the central part for me. So anyway, so long story short, I did submit the form, and I probably will go back and tinker with the tools. I just found them while she was talking about it, so I could go back because I'm very visual. And so I went, once I saw it, I thought, okay, let's go find that. And so I found it. So I'll try and meet with also with Violeta Ortega and see, because historically, not many people know, but back when the gunshot locator issue was and the crime was big, I believe Danny Gasparini was in the city council back then. That's how old we are. So anyway, a lot of people don't know that, but the gunshot locator was born here in Redwood City. It was the first system tested by the Department of Justice, and Violeta and I were one of the volunteers that went out on real night. I believe it was New Year's Eve, right, Violeta? And so we had little hard hats and little walkie-talkies in our phones. And the idea was we were supposed to call in the gunshots, and then the sheriff would look at the locator and see what the locator said to where we said we heard it. So you get a live person, and you get the system, and it got it within 10 feet of the discharge, and our ears could just basically say, I don't know, about 300, 500 feet. Most of it, we're pretty good at doing it, but not many people know the military uses it now. It's used in the green zone. So from all those complaining neighbors, because at the time, a lot of we felt like city council didn't want to hear from us. It turned out because the chief of police said, "Oh, stop complaining. You always complaining. Bring me some solutions." And so that was Keith, the Castrops, Violeta, Sandoval, Arturo. We all got together and we found Schoen, who had left SRI. And so that's why that's how a community under fire, literally gunfire, was able to solve a problem, because Redwood City is very resilient, and we tend to think big and think before situations happen. And so I think that's why, even though we were kind of pesky to the city council, I think over time, a lot of them grew to like us. Right, Denny? and because we were always polite, we would complain and do our marches and walks and everything. The most I think we had was 1,200 for the gunshot locator and over 1,500 for housing, if I'm not mistaken, Danny, down at the Fox Theater for the housing. So these issues have been going on for decades. And so hopefully with housing, we can make a dent. If we could figure out how to stop gunfire, maybe we can house some people. And as you noticed, my community of interest is homeless because I see them every day. They're literally in my neighborhood. And we don't complain, we don't report them. They're pretty mellow most of the time. And as you know, a lot of, like in Southern California, I think they have a lot of issue with them. But I tend to think it's more an attitude because here, as far as I can tell, going back decades, we haven't had a crime that has happened by homeless because the community and also the county tends to really try to help them as best we can. And also the neighbors, we try to be as polite and as helpful as we can because we understand a lot of them just need housing. And so hopefully I did put in senior housing because that's one thing Redwood City has not had in close to over 40 years is senior housing. And so hopefully that'll be good. And as you know, we have the housing for the mentally ill here by McDonald's. We also have Cassia House where mobile support is run out of. A lot of people didn't know that mobile support is run out of the Cassia House. For all of you that don't know what mobile support is, it used to be called the crisis team, the mental health crisis team. And it services all of San Mateo County. And it's based here in Redwood City out of Cassia House. Right next door, you know where the nativity scene gets set up? That's Cassia House. And then if you go to the other side of the block, you find the Catholic Worker House for teens that are experiencing homelessness. And as Alex knows, I'm trying to work on Gray Star. I did work on Sobrado. I did get some extra housing units for youth coming out of the foster care system, 18 to 23 or 26. And so he did put in 6 units. I'm now going to work on Gray Star. A lot of people were very critical of me because I was working with them. But we did a vaccine clinic and Gray Star gave us $1,000 and Sobrado gave us 500. So we could do gift cards and the majority of the people serviced ended up being youth for the Pfizer vaccine.
Maria,
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but what you're describing, just for everyone who's participating, you're describing communities of interest in the Stambaugh Heller neighborhood. Because I don't know if everyone knows kind of the details of the area that Maria is talking about, but she's specifically talking about the area along Middlefield by Jardín de Niños Park, basically, from everything that you're describing, correct, Maria?
Correct, with the exception of the Gunshot Locator, because that was crime that went from Palm Park to Stambaugh Heller to Redwood Village to Friendly Acres.
Yeah.
And so those were those neighborhoods that were severely impacted. Anyway, I think I've said enough. Thank you.
And Maria, remember, I want to buy you coffee. And that goes for everybody else who's a citizen who wants to be involved here. I want to hear from you. If you want to find me, go to Facebook, go to Twitter, go to LinkedIn. I'm all over the place.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments, feedback for the group?
Hey, Alex, it's Danny. Hi, Maria. It's we actually go way back before the city council days, back to the YMCA days. That's how far back we've known each other. But anyway, I have a question, Alex. I think you commented before. So Maria did a great job at identifying what she felt the communities of interest were for her neighborhood. Will she need to write a map out now and submit all of those submissions, or is her written testimony enough in this chat that we can copy and paste, and that would then automatically be submitted to the ARC? Or do we need to ask Maria to go and build 11 maps or the number of community of interest that she identified? Can you just clarify?
Yeah, so at least, and I'll have Sophia jump in too, but what we're doing right now is the chat itself is being recorded and saved for the record. So that will be submitted along with the packet for the Advisory District Committee. Also, Maria talks about the form, the survey that she has taken. So we already have that as well. We also have video evidence here, and we all were able to hear her this evening describing her neighborhood as well. So that'll be submitted into the record. And, more the merrier. If you want to, illustrate it for us, even better. Anything that you can do to be able to provide that, I think it would be wonderful. Sophia, am I missing anything?
I do want to say that redistricting partners, we won't be drawing maps based on written or verbal testimony, but any maps that are submitted on that paper form or on the districtor map, we will be taking all of those maps. If they need to be drawn into our platform, then we will draw them. We'll create all of them as PDFs with a breakdown of the data. They'll be able to see them as a Google map and then also as that shapefile. So if she'd like for them to be visual to kind of supplement all the testimony that anyone gives, written or verbal, that's just something to think about. But we won't be drawing maps based on verbal or written testimony, but they will be kind of in that packet that our members will receive when drawing draft maps. So it's not necessary, but that's something to think about. I hope that kind of answers your question, member. Okay.
And then I think my last question, I'm sorry, is I think, Alex, you'll cover it in just a minute, but for me, the District R or Districtor electronic tool is still a little bit frightening for me. I always think I'm going to do something and then something will flash up and say, you've just crashed the system. So I need to just spend more time and kind of play. But if anybody is having any difficulty with the electronic part of it, because again, it kind of takes this ability to know what you're doing and where to point your clicker and where the brush goes. Are there any resources that we can deploy to help people sort of navigate through? And Alex, you're nodding, you're probably already going to cover that.
No, so basically on the city's website, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but there is a helpful guide tool. Basically, that'll walk you through exactly how to use Districtor. So if you needed Sophia was great in being able to run us through this, but if you need step by step, you can almost open that up right next to, have another browser screen and you can go through and it'll show you one by one. The other piece that we're working on is getting a couple librarians trained up as well, where if people want to visit us at one of our local libraries, probably be the main library actually, and talking with the library director, they'd be able to, sit down one-on-one, but we're still working on the train the trainer phase and send that up. And then I know Redistricting Partners was going to set up some videos too, I believe. And I see Sophia.
Yeah, I think we're in that editing phase for the video for Redwood City. So we'll send that over. It'll be about a 10-minute video. But I did want to flag something that member Gasparini said. We don't encourage commissioners to draw any potential draft maps using Districtor. We know that the community of interest tool is up, so that's something that you can play around with. But in terms of submitting anything online, we don't encourage that, again, because we don't want anyone to have bias kind of going into that draft map phase. And I don't know if Veronica wants to touch on that too, but I just wanted to flag that that it's okay to kind of play around but not submit anything. But yeah, Veronica.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to add, we always want to remember, and I think what I heard is just playing around, but as members, you want to just be listening and taking in all the information right now. And so you are definitely in active listening mode, and understanding the tool is helpful, but no drawing at this point. You will definitely have an opportunity to draw maps once you've fully heard from the community and better understand what communities of interest are at play for each of the districts.
All right.
Okay, is that it?
I think so. You can adjourn us.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. The next district workshop will be held for District 3.
District 4.
District 4. Okay, I'm reading the script. Will be District 4 next Saturday, September 18th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. All community members are encouraged to attend, even if you don't belong in that district. In the meantime, if you have not yet completed a community of interest form, get to it. We need your input. In addition, if you have any questions or comments about redistricting, please email them to districtelections, one word, @redwoodcity.org. And I think that's it. So do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we need that?
No, you're fine. We can just adjourn. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
We're adjourned. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
evening.